to understand gravity, one must first understand what constitutes an object. An atom is the simplest object, and each one has its own center of gravity. Several atoms can make up a molecule, and each atom will retain its original center of gravity, while at the same time the new molecule organizes its own center of gravity independently of those atoms. The Earth is an object and has its own center of gravity, while the atoms and molecules constituting the Earth retain their own center of gravity, while at the same time their center of gravity also contributes to the center of gravity of the Earth. This is a strange phenomenon, and it occurs due to the superconducting environment found in each atomic nucleus, where the temperature is absolute zero. At absolute zero there is no resistance. We don't experience this effect directly, but we do have experience with it as gravity. The gravity of any object such as the Earth becomes organized into a focal center and reaches out into infinity, diminishing with distance, and this fact is true for each atom and molecule constituting the Earth as a whole. Another interesting fact about gravity is that gravity is not in any way blocked or diminished by another object. The sun's pull on the Earth is the same even if the moon is aligned, and it would seem to block apart the sun's pull. In this configuration the sun's pull adds to the moon's pull, but there is no diminishment due to the presence of the moon. Gravity is unaffected by the presence of other objects. The two objects merely combine gravity independently. Gravity reaches out into infinity, and any object within the gravity field of another object will form a new center of gravity determined by mass and its pull by distance, and this is independent of their individual centers of gravity. A galaxy is actually one object made up of many objects, and a galaxy has a center of gravity often theorized to be a black hole. Gravity is not in any way blocked or diminished by another object. Gravity's property of total penetrability is strongly suggestive of absolute zero superconductivity within the atomic nucleus. It is in fact proof. When the sun and moon are aligned, the sun's gravity combines with the moon's gravity without diminishment of the sun's pull on the tides. When the sun and moon are opposed, the sun's gravity pulls right on through the Earth, causing the tides on opposite sides to be approximately equal. This property of total penetrability for gravity strongly suggests an environment of absolute zero superconductivity below ground state within the atomic nucleus.
Do you see that moon over my shoulder? It has gravity pulling slightly on my back, but the planet below me has a center of positivity tugging on my breast's outermost ground state electron shells, causing them to sag a lot. It is the Earth's positive charges, organized into a center, a small spot at the center of the Earth. In regard to gravity, let us talk about these two objects. What I mean is, the Earth and the Moon. Both the mass of an object and the gravity of an object are organized about a center. There is a center of mass and there is a center of gravity for each object in the universe. This is a universal finding. Mass is determined by the number of protons, mass determines gravity, and so it is reasonable therefore that gravity is determined by protons, it is not. Protons, mass, gravity. Protons are at the center of each atom making up molecules, and for some reason the mass of protons constituting each object becomes organized into a center of mass as well as a center of gravity. Since we associate the positive charge with the proton, can we theorize a way for the positive charge to sum into a center of gravity and then postulate a mechanism for that to function as what we call gravity? It is obvious that gravity is something as simple as positive pulling on negative. But, you need to be aware that the accepted theory of science is that gravity is a magical mystery, which no human can comprehend. Well, after you see this presentation, you will have no doubt that gravity is the center of positivity pulling on the outermost ground state electron shells of molecules, and there is nothing mysterious about that.
Just as the center of positivity attracts the negativity of ground state electron shells of all neutral molecules, It also repels the positivity of outer electron shells of positively charged ions. In the high atmosphere called the ionosphere, where solar photon bombardment is intense, molecules such as diatomic oxygen tend to separate into positive and negative ions. In this next video, the aerospace scientist talks about this and the center of positivity repelling these positive ions off into space.
I'm Glyn Collinson from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. We're going to have to talk about two forces of nature. Firstly, the force of gravity. Gravity is the thing which is holding you down to the planet, but if you think about it, it's also what is holding the atmosphere down onto the planet as well. If I want to remove some of the oxygen from the planet, we have to overcome that gravity. So to do that, I want to talk about the electric force. And what we think can happen is that the electric force can help push on the ions and in the upper parts of the atmosphere, push them off and up into space. So just as every planet has a gravity field, we think that every planet has a weak electric field.
The guy from NASA stated that there is an electric force which is repelling the positive ions off into space. Now let us guess what that electric force might be. There are, in fact, only two choices, either positive force or negative force, and, of those two, only positive charge can repel positive ions. Once again, he falls short of calling this positive force the force of the charge of gravity, does he not? And to conclude, I wanted to remind the viewers of why science has been kept secret, especially at the most fundamental components. The one fundamental is gravity. This first animation is 1 minute long and talks about the negative charge that surrounds each atom and molecule. This negative charge prevents atoms and molecules from ever actually touching because they are repelling one another. It is also this negative charge which my theory of gravity says is attracted by the center of gravity, which you will hear a lot about. My theory states that gravity is the positive charge of protons, organized into a focal center, pulling on the negative charge of atoms and molecules, located at the ground state, outermost electron shells. All of this space between adjacent molecules is a function of negative charges mutually repelling at the outermost ground state electron shells. This negativity is attracted by the focal center of positive charge that we call gravity. Gravity is the center of positive charge of protons in any object, and that positive charge of the mass of protons is organized into a focal center and attracts the negativity of the outermost ground state electron shells of molecules only. Each object in the universe has a center of mass and a center of gravity. Gravity is in fact something as simple as positive pulling on negative. It is the superconducting environment of absolute zero below ground state which is responsible for organizing the positive charges of protons into a focal center. This next video is a clip from the Public Broadcasting Network where Nobel Prize winner Eric Cornwell describes the waves of one atom combining into the waves of other atoms until you can't tell one wave from another. Although he falls short of calling them gravity waves, or the waves of proton positive charge, it is obvious that he is saying that the superconducting environment of the atomic nucleus, which he refers to as the quantum world, organizes the waves of atoms into a focal center. In my theory, this is what I call the center of gravity. It is the positive charge of protons organized into a focal center, and attracting the negative charge of ground state electron shells.
Here is a demonstration of the difference between the environment below ground state compared to the environment above ground state.
You can think of it this way. In the ordinary world, you, me, Adam, anything you want, they're kind of like balls, just like these balls here. They bounce, they roll around, they bash off each other, but in the quantum mechanical world,
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it has happened. I have been banned from showing my tutorial Gravity is Electric version 2 over the whole entire United States of America. This shouldn't be too surprising when you consider who was motive to keep science secret. This ban only applies to YouTube so far, but I called in an acquaintance who thinks he can help me skirt copyright violations. The official complaint came from the public broadcasting system to YouTube, but I suspect the connections run a bit deeper than that. The phrase where Dr. Cornell stated that in the quantum mechanical world where the wave of one atom grows into the waves of other atoms until you can't tell the difference one wave from another. Yeah, I bet the man hated when Eric let that secret get out. Enjoy the show.
But in the quantum mechanical world, each of the atoms starts to act more and more like a wave, and eventually, the wave of one atom starts to grow into the wave of the other, and before you know it, and you can't tell one from the other. The atom could be over here, or it could be over there. And the cool thing is it could in some sense really be both at the same time.
There have to be something be in two places at once.
It's not something we understand that well either. We just go with it. The quantum mechanics is like that, yeah.
Rachel, you made the statement that neither the electron shells of the atomic nucleus, nor the protons are available for photon absorption. Could you tell us why that is, and why that fact creates the absolute zero environment below ground state which organizes the protons into a center of positivity that we experience as gravity?
Well, yes, it is as simple as, after nuclear fusion, the electrons below ground state are completely tied up with maintaining nuclear fusion, in their embrace with nuclear protons. The negative charges are balanced with the positive charges of the nuclear protons, and their electron shells have nothing left to offer. The inner electron shells are in perfect balance and at the quantum distance, and so no further interactions are possible. Nuclear fusion joins the inner electrons tightly with the nuclear protons, perfectly balancing positive and negative charges. It is only the outermost ground state electron shells which have the freedom to participate in photon absorption and re-emission, and this creates a possibility for molecular chemistry which makes life possible.
Something that, of course, we're brought up to believe, and that is that gravity is the controlling influence in the universe. It's what causes the planets to orbit around the Sun and the Moon around the Earth, and to cause the tides upon the Earth. All of that is true up to a point, but the thing to remember is that basically there is no understanding of gravity.
But you need to be aware that the accepted theory of science is that gravity is a magical mystery, which no human can comprehend.
So I don't argue with the fact that gravity is the controlling factor in the solar system and that it does raise tides. However, what I'm suggesting is that we don't have an explanation for gravity, and until we do, we will not understand the limitations of that theory.
So to do that, I want to talk about the electric force. And what we think can happen is that the electric force can help push on the ions and in the upper parts of the atmosphere, push them off and up into space.
But the electric universe just takes the simple proposition that it is an electrical force. It's a very weak leftover force, because although all matter is made up of positive and negative particles, so taking that very simple proposition and suggesting that electricity plays a part opens up all kinds of new possibilities.
So just as every planet has a gravity field, we think that every planet has a weak electric field. It's a monster of a force. It can rip heavy things like oxygen straight out of the upper atmosphere and send them kicking and screaming off into space.
In my theory, gravity is the positive charge of nuclear protons, organized by the superconducting environment of absolute zero, into a focal center of all objects in the universe. Gravity reaches out into infinity, diminishing with distance, attracting the negativity found at ground state electron shells. Gravity also repels all positive ions it may encounter. Gravity can be thought of as electric force, positivity attracting negative as well as positivity repelling positive. Something as simple as this should not be kept secret if we are to understand ourselves and the cosmos.